Good morning, guys. Welcome to this Tuesday, July 8th. Yesterday was actually an interesting start of the week. We had started off pretty slow, and then we had some action, some weakness going into the afternoon. And right now in the overnight, we've been kind of scratching back a little bit of those gains, a little bit of those losses. So we're kind of holding in the range still. We're not falling apart by any means. So interesting stuff going on there. Then not much news to drive the market today at all. We had a number come out at 6 a.m. Small business optimism index, and that's about the same, about as expected, 98.6 was that number. No more news to drive the market really for today's trading. I have a 3-year auction at 1. That could be interesting since they are refinancing debt on shorter term paper, but that's not much news at all to drive the market. Tomorrow we also have a pretty light news day, so the market is just kind of drifting, trying to find really moving based on general sentiment, and we'll see how that tailwind from that big beautiful bill is actually if that has any tailwind at all. So, or if it was all priced into the market. But the way it looks to me is that we start off range bound at this point. We cut off the buying here at the 63.24, 63.24s, or 63.24.25, and we cut off. Look to me like cut off the selling right now at the 62.40s, at least for now. And right now we're staying in that range. So unless they take this lower in today's trading, we're probably going to be in that stage 3 on the profile building value. And I'm going to assume that that's going to be happening. We'll see how it all develops, but that's kind of what I'm assuming is going to happen. And so trading as a range bound market, pretty much look to buy weakness all the way down here to that 62.40s. Look to sell strength up to the 63.15s. And the only caveat is that the capital flow is still very much pointed to the upside. So this whole thing is still extending and moving to the upside. So I would stay on the long side in the bigger picture, and in the shorter term we are kind of range bound. So if anything, I would favor the long side, but it just depends on a bit of how the day progresses. So would favor the long side if anything, but it is pretty darn range bound market we're looking at. So to get started, looking to buy against that 62.75, 67.68. That would be against that mode of yesterday. 60s, 50s, down to the 40, and down to the 45s for rotations back up. And looking for short setups against the 85s, the 60, this is 6300s, 6305, 6315, up to the 6325s. Could be all the way up to the 6330s too. So it's anything out here all the way up here could potentially hold resistance. So I would not be shy on any of them. I would favor the long side if anything, but but I would just keep my eye open in case they retrace further, start taking out that 45 level. Then we are still kind of backing off from the high, so that would put us back in stage 2. But I'm going to assume that we're not going to be in that spot, so we're going to be pretty much range bound going into today's trading. So looking to buy weakness, 62.75s. 67s against that mode, 60s, 50s down to the 45s. Looking to get short against the 62.85 to 90s, the 6300s, 6305s, 6315s up to the 6325s. Last one would be 6330s here for rotations back and down again. So that's how we get started. And then let's see how this day is going to shape up. They will strengthen overnight. If they knock it down and start extending to the downside, we are just back on stage 2 again, and looking for further pullbacks before they find a spot. So one spot they're going to find a an area where they're going to cut off the selling, and then we're going to be back in stage 3 again. I'm just assuming that that's going to be that's the 45 is going to be holding for now, and then we'll see how it develops. All right, looking at the NASDAQ and the bond market heading lower. And you can see We pretty much, let me see if I can find that capital flow real quick, show you in the bigger picture, capital flow, bond market heading back down towards its lower edge. They're going to start slowly work themselves across the range. If they could not take it higher, working themselves back down, see how far when they cut off the buying. So I would be looking for there. I would trade this on the short side right now, just to get started, see if they can take it lower. If they for some reason trade back above that 1310, I'm taking off that long bias, going back range bound. So initially looking for shorts against the 113s, 1305, 1304s, and then 1310s for rotations back down. And looking to buy weakness, not going to be super aggressive on that until we get down towards the 11 to the 112. So we start getting down to this area right down here. That's when we start worrying about start thinking about the long side. There could be long setups down here. Support could be holding anywhere on the way down here, but we're getting pretty close to that lower edge, and that's where we're going to find pretty good resistance or support, I should say, on this side. So support on this side, and so that's where I would be more focused on buying opportunities. So initially starting from the short side, if they for some reason trade up above that 113.10, we're taking off that long bias, short bias, and going back range bound, and get it out on the right side today. So starting off with a slight bias to the downside on the bonds. Nasdaq, same story as the ES here. Very interesting. They had a pretty good pullback yesterday, and right now they're just kind of settling in. So I'm going to assume that we are in state 3 on that profile right now. I'm assuming that this the 22,780 is going to hold. So starting off range bound, looking to buy weakness, if anything, given that capital flow is pointed higher. But gonna trade this pretty range bound today until I see some attempt to take it higher or potentially lower. So starting off looking to buy against the 22,900s, 870s, 840s, 815s down to the 780s for rotations back up again. And looking for short setups against that 980s. 23,020s, 2360s, and 23,100s for rotations back down again. So that's kind of what we start doing on the Nasdaq. We'll see how that shapes out in terms of directional moves. There's not much news to drive the market today, so it could go either which way. It just depends on the whatever algos and general sentiment is out there. So. And I think at this point, the tailwind from the bill signing probably is the best bet we have. And then, of course, if you start seeing some trade deals come through, I think the market's going to probably it's going to be probably a positive effect on the market. So this whole month is going to be a lot about those trade deals, tariffs, and what happens and what doesn't happen. So I'm not going to worry too much about that because every time market tend to react. Or used to be reacting pretty violently for it, but then of course nothing happens and things changes and suddenly it's like great buying opportunities people just missed. So, but anyway, looking to buy weakness all the way down here to that 780s, looking to sell strength all the way up here to that 23,100s, and then we'll see if they're going to break out of this range or not. We're starting off range bound on the Nasdaq to get into today's trading. And then finally, oil and gold. So oil, pretty down range bound, but I saw your little post there in the Gary that makes total sense. So if the Houthis are now starting to shoot on vessels in the Suez Canal there, that's of course is going to have a chilling effect, especially if they are oil tankers they're shooting at. So that makes sense, and that would probably drive prices up a little bit because they had to take the long route to get to Europe, and that's going to be smacked down pretty soon, I would think, if that continues. So that's not going to put it. So that's going to be like a short-term thing as long as it lasts, and then we'll see when they put down a hammer. So I would stay on the long side on oil at this point, just given that that uncertainty may be out there. That would be a geopolitical issue, but they're up here against that 67.50, 67.70. And as long as I would say, as long as I hold that 67.30 to 40 area of support, I would stay on the long side. If it comes out, I maybe buy one level below it at 67, but that would be it. If anything, I would look for them to start retracing this back in this lower range. So we will see. But I'm going to keep an eye on that, any news coming out of that part of the region to see um, if that's going to keep driving oil higher, because that they're not going to put up with that for too long. So looking to buy weakness at this point again, 67.30 to 40s. Last one would be 67s. Looking to sell strength, 67. What is it? With the 67.90s and the 68.20s for rotations back down again. And that's about it. That's the range we are trading in to get started. Let's see if they either going to break on the upside or they're going to retrace down here below that 67s. And if nothing, if neither happens, it probably is going to go sideways. So kind of what that's going to be like. And then finally gold. So gold is just sitting here now. Let me see. Gold is right at the attractor. So that's what that is. And looking at all gold, we're rolling it at the end of this month to the, I think the December expiration is what's coming up on gold. So basically trading around this attractor at 33.40 to 45s, and they probed lower, they retraced it right back up again, and that's where they are. So I would start off range bound on gold, look to fade the edges fairly equally, and then see if they can break out of that range. So if we start seeing something here below, you see that big volume edge here at the 3300s. Below that edge, we definitely start thinking about the short side. And if they start trading above this area, the four-letter edge here at the 3370s, I would start thinking about the long side. Other than that, it's just range bound trading around that 3340 area. So four-letter edge here at the 3370 on the upside. That's going to be these two areas of resistance we got to watch. And then also support areas down here at the 3300 or 3290 to 3300. Same as yesterday, but it's hasn't really changed a whole lot on that side. But we'll see which side gold is going to go on. So initially looking to buy weakness on gold. The first one's going to be the 30s, then the 22s, 15s, 08s down to that 3300s. Looking to sell strength 33.48s, 55s, 65s up to the 72s for rotations back down again. So those are the edges we're looking at. And then let's see how this whole thing shakes out going down into the yesterday's trading. This guy here has moved a little bit, should be down here. So let me correct that. This area of, come on. There it is. So 62s. So looking to sell strength 48s, 55s up to that 62 level, and then the last one is 72 here. I've adjusted this to get back down to this lower edge here at the 62s. That was the high of that in the July 3rd session. All right, so that's how we get started, guys, and we'll take it from there. So range bound gold, range bound oil. If anything, I would lean to the long side on oil to get started. And then let's see how this whole thing shakes out. So not much news to drive the market today. And so everything pretty much starting off range bound, and let's see how this whole thing develops from there. All right, so back to the ES, and that nothing has moved there. So it's pretty much still hanging where we started. So I'll wrap it there, guys. So yeah, good trading so far. Volume is like at 115 on the micros. Volume on the ES is 94. So kind of a light volume so far. So got good trading, guys, and I will see you back at the 11:30 update. Have a good one.